Hi students, so we're back here. I want to go over a couple quick things to really get you ready for what you will be doing in class when we kind of talk about these different types of scenarios and all the brain functioning and things that are happening with the body. So remember the last time we were together we talked about homeostasis, which is how our nervous system will work to keep us both alive and in balance, because we have to have these bursts of energy and things that need to happen when it's important, but we can't constantly be up on this type of high alert. So if you look at this next slide here, you can see how the sympathetic and the parasympathetic work together, and they always kind of have to balance each other out. Take a look at that graphic and kind of understand all of the different parts that are being controlled in the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, a couple of things that I want to get through, and this is a really important slide that I have to make sure it probably makes a lot of sense, but if you just read it this way, you might not exactly quite understand what I mean. So if you remember, I was talking a lot about the not the strength, but the amount of signal that would happen when we have, say, a painful episode on our body. So remember, we have this kind of rush of a whole bunch of stimulation, a whole bunch of sensation that happens with all of these action potentials, like really, really fast, right? And if it's a bad one, like me, you know, walking on top of I just did it the other morning. I stepped on a cord, like I unplugged something and it was on the floor and I stepped on it. Oh, that hurt really bad. So when you do things that are quite painful, you have to have this response. And it's a good thing that it's an automatic response, because if you had to wait for your to tell your body, ow, that hurts, you would probably be waiting much too long. In fact, your body responds to the pain even faster than you can. It's pretty amazing. Like, you will think about the pain after you've actually um, experienced the pain. That's kind of what we call this knee jerk reaction. So let's think about like a hot pot on top of a stove. Let's say that you went to grab the handle and it was hotter than you realized. Like, you went to grab the handle without a pot holder and you grabbed on and it was hotter than you realized. In order for those, you remember we have different types of neurons. In order for those neurons to communicate from grabbing it up through the interneurons in your back to your motor neurons in your brain, and then your body, like literally your muscles and your tendons and everything responding and acting and behaving, you would you would burn your hand long before. So this is what we call the pain reflex pathway. You could think of the same thing as like putting your finger in a flame. Like, you're going to pull it back long before your brain ever told you to turn to pull it back. And so this is a really important part of kind of, again, the evolutionary history. We have the ability to respond faster than our brain can comprehend, or faster than our brain maybe could process, to signal something is painful, and to keep us alive, to keep us from getting hurt any more than we would have to. And this is known as the pain reflex pathway. So I hope that when you come to class, if this doesn't make sense at all, this is one of the things that you write down and we talk about a little bit more if you're a little confused as to any of this, because this is a really important part of, I mean, just try to think about how it could apply to pretty much anything that we do. The pain reflex pathway is a very important automatic response of both our, probably, well, of our entire nervous system, of both the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. All right. So these are a couple of just little. Oh, I was going to mention about severing our spinal cord. What we've seen in people who've had severe damage to their spinal cord. Let's say, and I'm going to put my cursor here. You can see it. Let's say they have a bad vertebrae break or something happens to their spinal cord, like right in this area. Everything from that area down. So from this point down, they can't feel, and from this point up they can feel. So it depends on your range of mobility, depends on where your spinal cord was severed or where the damage really was done, because that pain, that sensation, will come up, but then it can't get to the brain. So if you have sensation, say above your, maybe your torso or your shoulders, well, anything that happens in those areas, your face, anything like that, the information will be sent up the interneurons to the brain to process and make sense of. But if it happens below that area, it's almost like it stopped. It was severed, and there's no way for that communication to get to the brain. So it's really important for people who do have paralysis to understand that they don't want to do any more damage to their body, let's say to their legs if they're paralyzed, maybe from the waist down or whatever it might be, because that could even, bring about more damage that they don't realize because they don't feel that pain. Okay, so a couple of just hints then. The central nervous system is in the center. The central nervous system is in the center of the body, and so think of that as like the brain and spinal cord. And the peripheral nervous system is everything else. It's on the periphery of the body, just on the sides, if you will, fingers, toes, arms, ears, whatever it happens to be. Think of the word somatic. Remember when we talked about a soma, the body, the center or the nucleus of the neuron? Think about the word somatic, like soma, that voluntary work is done by choice. And so you can remember that this is voluntary. And the word autonomic sounds a lot like automatic. We don't control our heartbeat. We don't control our digestion. We don't control our lots of things. Pulse. To an extent, I guess I'd say we don't control our pulse. So all of those things, that's a good thing, right? If you had to think about your heart pumping and like making sure you used mental energy to pump your heart, well, that wouldn't be so good. We could probably forget. So those are autonomic systems. All right, so moving on. This is the last part that I'm going to talk about in this little video of slides. So I want to talk about the endocrine system. And when we think about the endocrine system, we can compare it to the nervous system, except it's really slow. Think of the nervous system like, think of the central nervous system like Snapchat, where you send a message and it gets to your friend like immediately, almost immediately, right? Think of the endocrine system like the cards you get in the mail from your grandma on your birthday. Like, they're both great. You like getting Snapchats and you like getting a card in your birthday in the mail, right? But they're entirely different types of communication, but they're still kind of doing the same thing. And they're both great. Like, right? You like getting the card in the mail. Everybody likes getting mail still. But also you don't have that instant gratification the way you would with a Snapchat. So think of the nervous system kind of compared to the endocrine system, but that's a lot faster. The endocrine system goes very slow. And we look at it mostly through our hormones. So the chemical communication system in the endocrine system is a lot like in our nervous system, in the neurons. In fact, neuro means neurons. So those neurotransmitters sometimes look and act a lot like hormones in the body, but they're much slower. So, like, for instance, not that this would happen to me or any female, but like girls, maybe even guys. But have you ever like really been upset and crying and just mad and you don't know why, and you know, like, it's probably lasting for way more than it should. Like, you're really mad, but you can't exactly say why. But you also know you should probably not be mad anymore, but that makes you mad that you're still crying over this, whatever it happens to be. That's part of our endocrine system. It this communication can last a long time. So the glands in our bodies are what secrete hormones for us and influence our brains. Now remember, they work in tandem with each other. The nervous system is fast, but the endocrine system is slow. But they work together. It's what drives our sexual behavior. It's what drives our eating behavior for food. It's what drives our emotions, like aggression or even happiness to an extent. And so they can outlast these neural messages. The nervous system, really fast, that's like a Snapchat, and then it's gone, right? It's done. Except that card, you can keep that birthday card from grandma for a very, very long time. The endocrine system can definitely outlast the neural messages, and that's why we're more angry for longer than we should be, because that message is still coming into our body, being fed up to our brain, and we don't know why we're still mad, but we are. So the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands are right above our kidneys. These are a very important gland in our body to secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine. Now, do you remember when we talked about norepinephrine as a neurotransmitter? Sometimes we call epinephrine like adrenaline, or we call norepinephrine noradrenaline. Remember, and I talked about that fight or flight response and how we get like amped up, and it controls our happiness and mood regulation and things like that. Um, this is this is both of them are working. So if I talk about norepinephrine, it depends on where it's working in the body. If norepinephrine is being released in the brain, then it's as a neurotransmitter. But if norepinephrine is being released by the glands in the body, working through the body in the blood, then that's a hormone. That's in the endocrine system. So it really just depends on where it's happening in the body. All right, so the last thing, the pituitary gland. If you remember on that brain, especially, and I think maybe we had one of those questions on the 3D brain, the pituitary gland is the most influential gland in the endocrine system. Period. End of story. Period. It is the most influential endocrine system, the most influential gland. But it's really, really tiny. Like, it's just tiny, and it's way deep down in the center of our brain. It's in the core of our brain, and it influences the hypothalamus. Now, remember what I said when we talked about the hypothalamus, how important the hypothalamus is. It controls so many things. It is influenced by the hypothalamus and vice versa. Both of them kind of feed off of each other. And so remember, the hypothalamus controls eating, temperature, sleeping, sexual aggression, drive, motivation. Like, the hypothalamus is really super important. It helps control our pulse and things like that. And so the hypothalamus works with the pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland then has some really kind of control over other glands. And so our feedback system then, this is how the brain sends these instructions. So it goes from the brain in the pituitary gland, and then the pituitary gland talks to other glands, and then those glands release hormones, and then those hormones are sent through this is in the endocrine system, through the bloodstream to the body, to different parts of our body, and to our brain. This is how important the pituitary system is. So just keep in mind that really probably the one question that you will see most often, my test or the AP exam, whatever it happens to be, is going to be about the most influential gland in the endocrine system. It really does a lot. And know that it works in conjunction with the hypothalamus. Chances are, remember what I said, if you see a question and you don't have a clue what the answer is, but hypothalamus is the choice, answer hypothalamus. I bet they would not put a question that had both the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus, because they both work in coordination with each other so often. All right, so take a look at that slide and look at the endocrine system, how it really affects so much of our being. All right, so that's it for the day. I'll see you on Monday or Tuesday. I'm on my way to a race. We got to hit the road. See you next time. Bye.